I know what it's like when you start to feel that something isn't right in the world around you. That little voice inside you that whispers that there's more to life than just waking up, working, paying bills and going to sleep. It's like an itch in your mind that won't go away, no matter how hard you try to ignore it. You find yourself looking at the people around you and thinking, is it just me who's noticing this? I remember what it's like to be stuck in that endless routine. Monday comes and your body gets up, but something inside you stays down, reluctant. Breakfast tastes the same every day. The drive to work feels like a movie you've seen 100 times before. The conversations are predictable, the worries are the same, and at night you collapse into bed thinking, that's it? Is that all life has to offer? That feeling of emptiness even when you've achieved what you were told would bring happiness. You bought the car, got the promotion, renovated the house, but that deep satisfaction you were hoping to feel only lasted a few days, maybe hours. And soon you're looking for the next thing, the next goal, as if you're always chasing something that keeps slipping through your fingers. You smile in photos, but there are times when you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person you see. The questions start small and then grow. Why am I following this path? Who decided that this is the right way to live? Why do I feel guilty when I want something different? You begin to realize how many of your choices were not really yours, but the result of what family, friends, teachers, commercials, and films told you should want. And when that thought comes, it's impossible to shake it off. You try to share these feelings with someone close to you and you get strange looks or ready answers. Everyone feels that way sometimes. It's just a phase. You need a vacation. Maybe you should see a doctor. And you keep quiet, keeping those uncomfortable questions to yourself, feeling even more alone. As if you were seeing something that others can't or won't see. The days when you feel sad for no apparent reason. Everything is fine in your life, no serious problems, no immediate crisis, but something still hurts inside. A melancholy that doesn't make sense to the outside eye. You wonder if there's something wrong with you, why you can't just appreciate what you have like everyone else seems to do. What do others have that you can't achieve? And then come those unexpected moments of clarity. Perhaps watching the starry sky, or walking alone in a park, or listening to a song that touches something deep inside you. For a few moments, the fog clears and you feel a connection with something greater. As if for a brief moment you remembered something important that you had forgotten. Something about who you really are and why you're here. I understand that fear that arises when you start to question the structures of your life. It's like being on a boat in the middle of the ocean and realizing that there are cracks in the hull. The idea of abandoning old beliefs and habits is frightening because, even though they are unsatisfactory, they offer familiarity and some sense of security. The unknown always seems more threatening, even when the known is slowly suffocating your soul. The little resistances you encounter when you try to change. The friends who subtly discourage new paths. Family members who get uncomfortable when you express different ideas. Colleagues who make fun of your new interest in meditation or philosophy. The advertisements that seem to know exactly when you're vulnerable, offering quick, superficial solutions to your deepest concerns. It's no coincidence that it's so hard to break old patterns. Those dreams you had as a child that were kept in drawers deeper and deeper inside you. Remember that twinkle in your eye when you talked about what you wanted to be or do. That certainty, that pure connection with your desires, before the world taught you to be realistic and responsible. For some reason, children can see certain truths with a clarity that many adults have lost. And part of you still carries that childhood wisdom. There's a reason why you feel different sometimes, as if you're waking up while others are still asleep. It's not because you're better or worse, it's because something inside you refuses to accept a less than extraordinary life. Something inside you reminds you of a greater potential, of possibilities that go beyond the limitations we accept as normal. It's as if a part of you always knew there was more, much more. This awakening doesn't happen all at once. It's not like in the movies, where a moment of revelation changes everything instantly. It's a process full of advances and retreats, of momentary certainties followed by deep doubts. Days when you see with absolute clarity alternate with days when everything seems confused again. Know that this inconstancy is normal, it's part of the journey. The path was never meant to be straight or simple. If it were, everyone would find it easily. Think of the seeds that lie dormant during the winter. They look dead, immobile, lifeless, but inside them is a universe of possibilities waiting for the right conditions to awaken. So is your consciousness now. Something that has been dormant is ready to sprout, not because I say so, but because you have already begun to feel this inner movement. The discomfort you feel is the first sign of a seed that is about to break through its shell. Have you ever noticed how water finds its way? No matter how many dams you build, it always finds a way to move forward. Sometimes it flows strongly, sometimes just drop by drop, but it is persistent and patient. Your true nature is similar. No matter how much it has been dammed up by expectations, conditioning, and fears, something in you continues to seek its natural course. You can feel this pressure building up, this need to find your true flow. The people in the supermarket queue, each immersed in their own world. Look closely and you'll see the signs: empty stares, smiles that don't reach the eyes, bodies tense even at rest. All carrying unasked questions, unexpressed longings. Everyone following the same social script without question. And then there's you, starting to notice the script, starting to see the invisible choreography that everyone follows without realizing it. This is the first step beyond the collective dream. When a child learns to walk, they don't worry about how many times they fall. There is no shame, no fear of judgment, just the joy of exploration. At some point, we lose this freedom. We begin to measure every step, to fear every possible stumble, to define ourselves by our falls instead of celebrating our attempts. But this fear isn't really yours, it's been implanted, carefully cultivated in you to keep you in line, to ensure that you never explore beyond the established boundaries. The bird born in captivity believes that flying is a disease. It imagines that the impulse to spread its wings is a defect, something to be controlled and suppressed. How many of your deepest desires have you treated as mistakes? How many times have you apologized for wanting more space, more freedom, more meaning? What would it be like to recognize that these impulses are not flaws in your programming, but precise indicators of your true nature that wants to express itself? Think about how the sun rises every day, regardless of who is watching. It doesn't ask permission, it doesn't wait for approval, it simply fulfills its purpose. Inside you is a similar light. It doesn't need external validation to shine. It doesn't depend on the recognition of others to exist. For a long time, you may have been waiting for someone to give you permission to be who you really are. Awakening begins when you realize that this permission was always yours to give yourself. Fish don't know they're in the water until they're taken out of it. We live immersed in belief systems, assumptions, and stories about how life should be lived, so completely involved that we don't even realize they exist. They are like the air we breathe, invisible, but determining every aspect of our experience. The first glimpse of the truth is like emerging briefly to the surface and realizing, with surprise and shock, wait, is there something beyond this? Is there another way of being? A pot of water on the stove. At 99 degrees, it looks exactly the same as when it was at 98 degrees. Nothing visible has changed. And then, with just one more degree, the transformation takes place. The water boils, changes state, becomes something new. Many people live their whole lives at 99 degrees, so close to the transformation that they can feel it, but never experiencing the full change. You are on that threshold now, feeling the heat rising, realizing that something is about to fundamentally change. The trees in the forest seem separate above ground, distinct individuals occupying their own space. But beneath the earth, their roots form an interconnected network, sharing nutrients and information, communicating in ways we are only now beginning to understand. Your sense of isolation, that deep-seated belief that your doubts and anxieties are unique, that your discomfort with the world is a personal failing, is an illusion as powerful as the apparent separation of the trees. You are not alone in this awakening. Remember when you first learned to drive. At first, every action required conscious attention, signaling, changing gears, checking the mirrors. Now, you do everything automatically, sometimes arriving at your destination without even remembering the route. Much of your life has become like this, a series of automatic responses to familiar stimuli. Autopilot is efficient, but it comes at a cost. We no longer perceive the extraordinary in the ordinary, we no longer question the path, we just follow the invisible tracks that have been laid down for us. When clean water is poured into dirty water, the clean water becomes dirty. When clean water keeps flowing into dirty water, eventually the dirty water becomes clean. This is the power of persistence, of consistency in your awakening. The world will keep trying to cloud your clarity, confuse your vision, pull you back into the collective dream. Not because there is a conspiracy against you, but because entire systems depend on your unconscious participation, on your unquestioning acceptance. The stars are always present in the sky, even during the day. They don't disappear when the sun rises. We simply can't see them because of the stronger light that floods our vision. So too are the deeper truths about who you are and why you're here, always present, even when dimmed by the intense brightness of everyday distractions, immediate concerns, manufactured urgencies. Awakening is not so much about discovering something new, as it is about allowing what has always been there to finally become visible to you. What happens when a caterpillar enters the cocoon? It doesn't just grow wings, its entire body dissolves into a primordial soup before reforming into something completely new. This process of dissolution is necessary for transformation. Many people fear this in-between space, this state of not knowing who they are anymore, of feeling dismantled before finding their new form. But it is precisely in this space of dissolution that true potential is revealed. The systems that shape our society weren't designed for you to awaken. They were built to keep everything running predictably, to create people who produce and consume without asking too many questions. It's not a dark conspiracy, it's just the path of least resistance to keep things in order. But you start to feel that there is a difference between order and alignment, between functioning well within a system and being truly alive. That distinction is crucial. Notice how your body reacts when you do something that goes against your own inner sense of truth. That tension in your stomach during a meeting when you agree to something you feel is wrong. The tightness in your chest when you say yes when you mean no. The inexplicable tiredness after hours spent doing something that has no real meaning for you. Your body is already talking, it's already showing you where the disconnects are. It has always known. The question is, when will you start listening? There is a fundamental difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is accumulating information. We can have whole libraries of knowledge without it changing who we are. Wisdom is the metabolization of experience, the deep digestion of life that fundamentally alters our way of being in the world. Many are drowning in information but starving for wisdom. Society celebrates knowledge, but rarely creates spaces for wisdom to flourish. That's why their longing for something deeper seems so countercultural. The sleepiest people often have the strongest reactions when someone begins to awaken. Like those experiments where a group of people are instructed to give obviously incorrect answers, and the only uninformed participant begins to doubt their own perception. Have you ever felt that? That moment when you express a genuine doubt about how we live, and you're treated as naive, idealistic, or even dangerous. It's not you who's wrong, it's just the system protecting itself. There is a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness comes from the unfulfilled desire for connection, the feeling that no one really sees or understands you. Solitude is the sacred space of finding yourself, of hearing your own voice without the constant interference of external noise. In a culture that fears silence, that fills every moment with entertainment and distraction, learning to inhabit this space of solitude becomes a revolutionary act. It is there, in the silence, that you can finally hear what you have always known. The conditioned mind is like a room full of furniture where you have to squirm to get around. So used to navigating between these limitations, you forget that the furniture can be moved, that the space can be reorganized. The beliefs you take for granted about yourself, about what's possible, about how the world works, are just pieces of mental furniture. Some were put there before you were even old enough to question their usefulness or position. Observe a child who has not yet been fully socialized. See how they respond directly to life, how their curiosity has no filters, how their joy doesn't depend on achievement. At some point, we learn to exchange this direct connection with experience for a complex system of if-then. If I get this job, then I'll be happy. If I lose weight, then I'll be loved. If I accumulate enough, then I'll be safe. The mathematics of conditionality replaces the simplicity of being alive. Awakening begins when we question this exchange. There's a paradox at the heart of awakening. The more you search, the more you realize that what you're looking for was never really lost. It's like frantically searching for the glasses that are already on your head. The sense of lack, of incompleteness that drives so much anguish, is not a sign that something external is missing, but an invitation to recognize what is already present but has been ignored. The journey is not so much about acquiring something new, but about shedding the layers that obscure what has always been there. Think about how many times you've said, one day I'll follow that passion, one day I'll have that difficult conversation, one day I'll really live the way I feel I should. As if time were an infinite resource, as if there were a guarantee that the perfect time will come to finally be true to yourself. But life happens now, always now, only now. Awakening is not a future event, it's the recognition that there is no other time than now to start living with intention. There is an invisible economy operating in your life, not of money, but of attention. Where does your attention flow? What do you feed with your focus? Just as the money you spend reveals your priorities, the attention you invest shapes your experience of life. The media, technology, social systems, all have been refined to capture and monetize your attention. Regaining sovereignty over this precious resource is no trivial matter. It is the foundation of any real transformation. There is a special quality to the moment when you begin to see through the illusion. It's like those optical illusion drawings. Once you see the hidden image, you can't miss it. In the same way, once you begin to perceive the invisible structures that have shaped your perception, you can't simply go back to your previous unconsciousness. This is an irreversible threshold. You can try to ignore what you've seen, you can try to convince yourself that you were imagining things, but a part of you knows the truth, and that part won't shut up easily. Awakening doesn't just happen in the mind, it must manifest in your daily life, otherwise it remains just an interesting idea, a concept that you visit from time to time, like a museum. You know you've started to really awaken when your daily choices start to change, when you start to notice the difference between acting out of habit and acting out of conscious intention. It's in the small moments, how you answer an email, how you listen to someone talking, how you decide to use your free time, that transformation really happens. Many people want to jump straight to freedom without doing the intermediate work of realizing exactly where and how they are trapped. Like a bird crashing through a glass window, repeatedly colliding with invisible barriers without understanding their nature. Before trying to fly to freedom, you need to map out your prison, recognize the automatic thought patterns, the emotional triggers, the unconscious routines. Not to judge yourself for them, but to see them clearly, without the layers of justification we normally use to keep everything in place. The body carries truths that the mind tries to ignore. That chronic tension in the shoulders. The digestive problems that arise in certain environments. The exhaustion that no amount of rest seems to solve. While you're looking for answers in books, philosophies, and grand theories about awakening, your body is already talking, it's already showing you where the distortions are in your life. Wisdom isn't just in the mind, it's distributed throughout your being, like an integrated knowledge system waiting to be accessed. When you start to awaken, the world doesn't necessarily applaud you. In fact, many of the structures in your life may begin to creak under the weight of this new awareness. Relationships where you've always played a specific role can become strained when you stop following the script. Professional environments can become uncomfortable when you start to question purpose and practice. It's like renovating the foundations of a house while continuing to live in it. The process is inevitably uncomfortable, sometimes even chaotic. You don't have to burn your previous life to awaken. There is a common fantasy that transformation requires dramatic changes, dropping everything, moving to another country, abandoning all material possessions. For some, this radical path is necessary, but for most, true courage lies in bringing new awareness to the life they already have. In seeing the familiar with new eyes. In staying in the same spaces, but inhabiting them differently. In transforming existing relationships through a more authentic presence, rather than simply abandoning them. Technology itself is not the problem, but the way we use it often reinforces the state of sleepwalking. Every notification, every news feed, every new recommended video, all designed to keep your attention fragmented, your sense of self scattered among 1,000 stimuli. There's a reason why moments of clarity often arise when you're away from screens, when your nervous system has a chance to calm down, when your attention can be reunited instead of constantly divided. Resistance arises when you start to change, internally and externally. Internally, like that voice that says, "That's silly, who do you think you are, you're exaggerating." Externally, as small comments from people close to you, subtle discouragements, even genuine concern about your well-being. This resistance is not a sign that you're on the wrong track, on the contrary. It's like the friction needed to light a match. Without resistance, there is no transformation. The trick is to recognize it as part of the process, neither fighting against it nor being defeated by it. A curious aspect of awakening is that it is not linear. It's not like climbing a ladder, where each rung takes you consistently upwards. It's more like a spiral. You keep encountering the same themes, the same challenges, but from slightly different perspectives. What feels like regression is often just a re-encounter with a lesson on a deeper level. That pattern you thought you had overcome appears again, not as a punishment, but as an invitation to a more nuanced understanding, a more complete integration. The myth of the perfect enlightened one does more harm than good. That image of someone perpetually serene, never disturbed by ordinary human emotions, always making perfect decisions. This impossible ideal becomes just another form of self-judgment, another way of feeling inadequate. True awakening doesn't eliminate your humanity, it embraces it completely. You still feel fear, anger, sadness, jealousy. The difference is that these emotions pass through you like visitors, instead of defining who you are. Beware the trap of woke identity, that subtle sense of superiority that can arise when you start to see patterns that others don't. It's seductive to feel that you get it. It's seductive to feel that you get it while others remain asleep. But this separation is just the ego finding a new way to strengthen itself. True awakening leads to more compassion, not more judgment, to more connection, not more separation. When you really see the nature of conditioning, how can you judge someone for being trapped in it? There is a crucial difference between seeking and allowing. Much of the modern spiritual path is structured as a quest to find the right teacher, the right practice, the right insight that will finally solve everything. But this search model perpetuates the very sense of lack that it aims to solve. At some point, the journey shifts from seeking to allowing, creating space for what is already present to reveal itself. Like cleaning a dusty window instead of looking for a better view elsewhere. The question is not so much what should I do, but where am I acting from? Two people can perform exactly the same action, same words, same gestures, and create completely different effects, depending on the inner state from which the action emerges. This is why specific formulas and steps often fail. Awakening is not about following a new set of rules, but about acting from a different place within yourself, a place of clarity and presence rather than automatic reactivity. Imagine a spider's web at dawn, covered in dewdrops. Each drop reflects the whole world in miniature, each its own perfect sphere containing the whole. So are we, seemingly separate, individual, but each reflecting and containing the same fundamental reality. Your personal awakening, although it may seem lonely at times, is part of a larger awakening. Each person who begins to question, to see beyond appearances, strengthens a growing field of consciousness that transcends the barriers of time and space. There is a rhythm in nature that never misses its beat, the heart that beats, the tide that rises and falls, the seasons that follow one another in perfect coordination. Somewhere along the way, many of us have lost touch with this rhythm, speeding up to keep up with artificial clocks, invented deadlines, manufactured expectations. Part of awakening is simply returning to that original rhythm, allowing the body and mind to find their natural cadence again. It's not so much about doing something new, but about stopping interfering with what you already know how to flow. The paradox is that the more deeply you accept where you are now, with all its imperfections, confusions, and limitations, the freer you become to change. It's as if resistance to what is creates a tension that freezes the present moment, making it solid and unchangeable. Acceptance, on the other hand, creates a field of possibilities where the new can emerge naturally. This isn't resignation, it's recognizing reality as it is, without adding layers of judgment that make everything heavier and more rigid. Have you ever noticed how most people seem to be in a constant struggle against time? Always rushing, always with the feeling that there isn't enough. This distorted relationship with time is one of the main symptoms of sleepwalking. Time is not your enemy, it's not something to be beaten, controlled, or manipulated. It is the medium through which life expresses itself. When you start to wake up, your experience of time changes fundamentally. The same 60 minutes can expand to contain infinite moments of presence, or contract into a single moment of full awareness. The stories we tell ourselves are powerful, not because they are true, but because we live them as if they were. I'm too shy for this, I've never been good with numbers, people like me can't succeed in this area, narratives that we repeat until they become invisible walls limiting our movements. Awakening involves recognizing these stories for what they are, constructs, not facts. It's not about immediately replacing them with better stories, but about seeing clearly how they work, how they shape your experience, how they hold a certain version of you in place. There is a quality of inevitability to awakening. Once it has begun, it cannot be completely reversed. You can resist, you can delay, you can be temporarily distracted, but that first ray of clarity creates an opening that never closes completely. It's like a seed that has cracked its shell. Growth isn't always constant. There may be periods of apparent dormancy, but the process has begun and will continue, often in invisible, underground ways, until conditions are once again favorable for a visible growth spurt. The crises in your life are not failures of the process, they are part of it. That relationship that fell apart, the job you lost, the illness that forced you to stop. Moments when the ground seems to disappear from under your feet often create openings for deeper awareness. Not because the suffering itself is necessary, but because these ruptures in the habitual structures of your life create spaces where something new can enter. Cracks, as the poet says, are like where the light comes in. You are both the wave and the ocean. The wave, your personality, your individual story, your unique journey through life. The ocean, the wider consciousness from which you temporarily emerge as a distinct expression before returning. The mistake is not being a wave. The beauty lies precisely in the diversity of expressions that the ocean can take. The mistake is to forget the ocean, to think that you are just the wave, isolated, separate, fighting for survival against all the other waves. Awakening is remembering your dual nature, honoring your unique form while acknowledging its source. Silence has its own eloquence. In a culture obsessed with noise, more information, more opinions, more stimuli, learning to value silence becomes revolutionary. It's not just the absence of sound, but the presence of something more subtle, a quality of attention, a receptivity that allows normally invisible dimensions of reality to become perceptible. Like a lake that needs to be perfectly still to faithfully reflect the sky, your mind needs moments of genuine stillness to reflect the truth without distortion. Sometimes, the most courageous path is not to change everything, but to remain exactly where you are with a totally new awareness. Continue in the same job, but bring total presence to each task. Maintaining the same relationships, but abandoning emotional games and unspoken expectations. Living in the same house, but seeing each room with new eyes, as if you were entering it for the first time. This is a profound form of transformation that doesn't depend on external circumstances. It's a silent revolution that takes place right where you are. You are not alone in this awakening. All over the world, people are feeling the same call, asking the same questions, searching beyond conventional answers. Like trees whose roots communicate underground, there is an invisible network connecting everyone who begins to question the dormant structures of consciousness. You don't need to know them personally to benefit from this growing field of consciousness. Your own journey is strengthened by each person who chooses to awaken, just as your awakening strengthens theirs. I remember looking up at the stars as a child and feeling something indescribable, a mixture of awe, belonging and mystery that couldn't be put into words. That feeling wasn't just a childish emotion, it was an intuitive recognition of the vastness that is you, a temporary glimpse beyond the veil of separate identity. And now, here you are, rediscovering that knowledge, not as an intellectual concept, but as a lived truth. The circle is complete. What you've always been looking for is what you've always been. The treasure was buried in your own garden all along. And now that you've started to unearth it, the world will never look the same again.